Amina's breath came shallow, her chest rising and falling with unease beneath a tattered woven blanket. Outside, the moon hung heavy and full like an ancient eye, spilling its pale light through the broken slats of her hut. The beams of moonlight touched the floor in soft ribbons, illuminating the corners of her small world: a jug of water, a bundle of herbs, a hand-carved flute that hadn't sung in years. Her fingers twitched as if grasping for something she could no longer name, and beneath her, the earthen floor seemed to tremble, a ripple, not of motion, but of memory. In the distance, nothing stirred. No crickets. No wind. Only silence and the weight of something old beginning to wake. She stood barefoot on cool dirt, blinking beneath the ghostlight of the moon. The village of Lulendo was wrapped in a strange silence, not the gentle quiet of sleep, but the suffocating hush of something withheld. A gray mist rolled low across the ground, curling like smoke around her ankles. The hut stood like empty shells, roofs sagging under time and absence. Not even the old dogs barked. Amina hugged her arms around her thin frame, not from cold, but from a sense that something sacred had broken. Or returned. She walked slowly toward the river, once the lifeblood of the village, now just a wound. Where once children splashed and elders cast nets, only a thick, black surface remained. The water no longer flowed, it brooded. The reeds on the bank stood still, unmoving even as the mist kissed their tips. The reflection that met her gaze on the water was not quite her own, her eyes too wide, her expression too knowing. Amina stared into it and whispered, "What are you?" But the river didn't answer. Not yet. Then it happened. A single ripple, perfect and round, expanded across the surface. Then another. And another. Her breath caught. The river was still, yet it stirred, not from above, but from within. Something underneath had moved. She leaned closer, squinting. The air turned heavier. Her heart, once steady, now beat in rhythm with the ripples, and in their center, for the briefest moment, was a shimmer like a distant eye opening. Across the water, just where the mist thickened, a figure appeared. Cloaked in red, unmoving. Amina blinked, and the figure remained. The woman stood at the edge of the trees, no face, no features, only presence. She raised one hand, slowly, deliberately. Not a wave. A signal. A call. And then, like smoke in wind, she vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. Her legs moved before thought could catch them. She ran barefoot through mist and memory, through alleys of mud brick homes and sleeping livestock. Her grandmother's hut stood at the edge of the village, marked by old bones hanging from the doorway and prayer cloths faded by sun. She burst inside, panting. And there, by the flickering light of a dying lantern, sat Mama Osei, eyes already open, calm, ancient. "You saw her," the old woman said. "Didn't you?" The room smelled of smoke, clove, and secrets. Bundles of dried herbs dangled from the beams. A clay pot of smoldering charcoal let off thin trails of incense that curled toward a thatched ceiling stained with time. Symbols were etched into the dirt floor, spirals, eyes, water lines. Amina sank to her knees as the walls seemed to lean in to listen. Mama Osei placed a hand over Amina's heart and nodded. "The river stirs for you, child." From a bundle wrapped in goat leather, the old woman withdrew a pendant, carved of dark wood, its shape like a teardrop wrapped in flame. It was bound in copper wire, and small stones danced inside it when shaken. She tied it around Amina's neck with fingers that trembled slightly. "Your mother wore this when the river last sang. Now it sings for you." That night, sleep came hard, and when it came deep. In the dream, Amina floated in a world of blue twilight. Below her, through murky waters thick as oil, lay a drum, enormous, ancient, bound in vines. Its skin shimmered with symbols too old to name. It beat once. The sound traveled through her bones like a storm. She screamed soundlessly as bubbles rose around her, and then she awoke, soaked in sweat, the pendant glowing faintly at her throat. By morning, the fog had not lifted. But the people had risen. Silent and slow, they gathered along the riverbank, whispering prayers and stories passed in hushed tones. No one had heard the river speak, but everyone had felt it. A heaviness. A summons. Even the children, usually loud and restless, stood still beside their mothers. The elders stood at the front, cloaks drawn tight, staffs in hand. They did not speak of drums. But the word hung unspoken in the air like smoke. Elder Moody stepped forward, his face carved by time and regret. "It has begun again," he said, voice cracked like dry wood. "The river remembers." No one answered. But many turned to look at Amina, who stood at the edge of the crowd, alone, the pendant catching the first light of day. She didn't feel afraid. Not anymore. The mist parted just enough to form a narrow path through the reeds. Her feet moved on their own. One step. Then another. The village faded behind her. The river called, not with voice, but with pull. And she answered. The forest of Limo began as a whisper, a hush of shadows and green. Trees arched like ancient guardians, their roots thick and tangled beneath moss. Amina entered barefoot, her skin brushing against vines that seemed to pulse with memory. The light dimmed with every step, not from clouds but from stories hidden in leaves. The deeper she walked, the more she felt the river inside her bones, humming like a name waiting to be spoken. The forest moved around her. Vines parted before her, leaves swaying without wind. She wasn't simply walking through, she was being guided. Branches twisted into archways, roots pulled back, showing her the way like a forgotten map awakening beneath her feet. With every step, the pendant on her chest grew warmer, its soft pulse echoing through the hush. Tucked beneath a collapsed fig tree, half swallowed by earth and time, a shrine emerged. Covered in moss, yet unmistakable. Symbols were carved into its stone, spirals, waves, eyes. Offerings long turned to dust sat in bowls. Amina knelt, unsure why. Her hand reached forward. The stone was cool. Then it wasn't. It burned. She gasped as her palm began to bleed where the spiral touched her. The moment her blood touched the carving, it came alive. A cold blue glow pulsed from the spiral, then spread across the stone. Symbols awoke like sleeping eyes opening after centuries. The earth beneath her rumbled softly. From somewhere far, far below, the river answered with a single, slow breath. The air thickened, not with smoke, but with presence. Figures rose from the mist, tall, glowing forms with blurred features, dressed in layers of cloth and memory. They didn't speak. But Amina felt their eyes, their thoughts, their hunger to be known. She wasn't afraid. She was recognized. She staggered back, the world tilting. The pendant on her chest blazed with light. Her body hit the forest floor, eyes wide, frozen, but her spirit rose. She floated above herself, suspended in silence. Then came visions, fire, water, running footsteps, her mother's voice yelling her name. And a drumbeat louder than breath. When her eyes opened again, she was no longer in the forest. A cave surrounded her, glowing roots dangling like chandeliers of light. The walls were wet but warm, alive with the low hum of water. She sat up slowly. Her hands were muddy. Her pendant had gone dark. The only sound was the deep, steady breathing of something ancient. And there it was. In the center of the cave. The drum. Not carved by hand, but shaped by something deeper. Its skin was bound in riverweed, etched with markings too complex for memory. Amina stepped forward slowly. The drum called not to her ears, but to her blood. This was not a relic. It was alive. And it had waited. Her hand hovered inches above it. The silence deepened. Then, with a breath, she let her fingers fall onto its surface. It was cold. Then warm. Then blistering. She cried out. A slash opened across her palm as if the drum had bitten her. Blood dripped onto its hide. The drum pulsed once, like a heartbeat returned. Her hand hovered inches above it. The silence deepened. Then, with a breath, she let her fingers fall onto its surface. It was cold. Then warm. Then blistering. She cried out. A slash opened across her palm as if the drum had bitten her. Blood dripped onto its hide. The drum pulsed once, like a heartbeat returned. The cave shook. Water spilled from cracks in the walls. Roots writhed above her head. She ran, stumbling through tunnels that hadn't opened in generations. The earth moaned as she emerged into the forest again, the pendant at her throat pulsing. The river was no longer silent. Back in the Lendo, the river ran red. Not with blood, but with memory. The elders screamed. Mothers pulled children away. Chickens scattered. The dogs howled. She's brought it back, someone cried. The drowned truth. Someone else. Amina stood at the river's edge. Alone. They gathered beneath the banyan, 12 men in aging robes, staffs clutched like shields. You were supposed to forget, said Elder Moody. That's why we buried it. Amina didn't bow. She stepped forward. The river remembers. And so do I. From beneath her cloak, she drew the drum skin. The moment it was exposed to air, the sky dimmed. Clouds spiraled. Thunder rolled. She placed it on the sacred stone and struck it once. The sound echoed beyond sound. Villagers fell to their knees. The ancestors had arrived. One by one, they saw adulteries, lies, betrayals, names erased from the record. Children never claimed. Wives silenced. Husbands lost. They wept. Some screamed. Others stared at nothing. But no one could deny it. Truth had returned. A soft breeze swept the village square. The clouds opened. Rain fell, slow, heavy, holy. The children danced barefoot. The elders raised their faces to the sky. The fig trees bloomed. The silence that had choked the land was broken. And the river sang. She returned to the long-abandoned schoolhouse, swept the floors, mended the shutters, and placed the drum skin high on the wall. Children came. They sat cross-legged as Amina spoke the names of the forgotten, drew their symbols, told their stories. The past was no longer hidden. It was taught. The river flowed clear. Cloths of red, yellow, and blue fluttered from every tree. Music returned. Drums rang not in warning, but in welcome. And beneath the great river tree, Amina stood, not as a girl, not as a threat, but as the keeper. The village sang. The river laughed. And the silence was no more.